global backlash continues against last week's designation of Jerusalem Al-Quds as Israel's capital by US President Donald Trump. And leaders across the world are increasingly making it clear that they do not see eye to eye with Trump over his controversial move. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveled to Brussels on Monday to persuade the European Union to do the same and recognize Jerusalem Al-Quds as the Israeli capital. But the EU rejected his call over concerns that the move could inflame violence and eventually wreck the chance for peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
We're quite clear we do not agree with the announcement that Jerusalem is the capital, which should have been a final status issue. And in particular, of course, Jerusalem is divided between East and West, and East Jerusalem is most certainly not part of Israel.
The European position, we still see the two-state solution as the only way forward with regard to the peace process. We believe that all steps that make it more difficult for the bilateral negotiations to lead to a meaningful settlement.
There were already speculations that the patience of Europe was running thin over what it sees as growing hostile moves by the Israelis against the Palestinians. Some believe that Trump's designation of Jerusalem Al-Quds could only push the EU faster in that direction. And this could lead to the alienation of Israel at the international level, specifically among the European states.
I don't think that this decision was driven by any kind of outside advocacy group. I think that this was a decision taken by Trump and some of his closest supporters. I think his son-in-law very much supported the decision, and which is interesting because, of course, Jared Kushner has taken on the responsibility for leading American efforts to try to produce a peace agreement between Israelis and Palestinians. So I was surprised that he would support a move like this, which can only set back that effort, set back that cause. But yes, his son-in-law supported it. And so I think this was a small circle of people who concluded that there would be political benefit to doing this, and they did it.
Israel knows that many European countries are becoming less and less tolerant of the apartheid situation in the West Bank and Gaza, and that they are no longer tolerating the colonial project, despite the fact that it was Europeans and Americans that initiated it more than 100 years ago, initiated the project of Zionism. I don't think that Europe is in the same place that it was, where it wants to support such a venture.
Meanwhile, anger is boiling up in the Muslim world against Trump's announcement that Washington considers Jerusalem Al-Quds as Israel's capital. Daily protests are held in most Muslim capitals against what is feared to eventually escalate Israeli-Palestinian tensions. Many may expect powerful blocs like the European Union to stand against the United States and Israel over this controversial move. But experts believe the stakes are too high for Europe to take a dramatic change in its positions toward Israel in favor of the Palestinians.
They're kind of caught between taking a completely pro-Israel United States kind of perspective, and then, but the European nations are certainly not the nations that are in the forefront of accepting and promoting Palestinian sovereignty and nation. I think they're going to hew to a middle line. They're going to very easily denounce the symbolic move of the United States, but they're not going to fall into a Palestinian nationalist camp, unfortunately for the Palestinians, because Europe could be quite a strong advocate and ally for Palestine, but at this point it has not done so.
It is widely believed that Trump's designation of Jerusalem Al-Quds was merely a symbolic move, but it nonetheless meant for certain serious political objectives into the future. Speculations on whether the move would lead to an escalation of violence between the Israelis and the Palestinians vary among analysts. But from the current signs on the ground, it appears that the Israelis will have to deal with rising anger around themselves and in other countries for the time being.